I just read my hair. Hey guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. If you're new here, welcome to my channel. If you're new here, welcome to my YouTube channel. I speak about different topics in my channel. If you're interested in that, go ahead and subscribe and hit that bell so you can be notified. Let me tell y'all guys, I was not thinking about uploading today, but I was like, you know what, let me upload. Today we're going to be talking about a crime that changed the law. So we're going to be talking about the murder of Sylvia Likens. So let's just go ahead and get started. Granny Nia Baniski was born in Indianapolis, Indiana, and helped Marcus Van Forster and Molly Machuria, both of whom were originally from Illinois and were English and Dutch descent. Baniski was the third of 6 children, and her family was working class. On October 5, 1939, Baniski saw her 50-year-old father die from a sudden heart attack. 6 years later, she dropped out of high school at age 16 to marry an 18-year-old John Stephen Baniski, who was originally from Youngsville, Pennsylvania, was of Polish ancestry, and with whom she had 4 children. Although John had a volatile temper and occasionally beat his wife, the two remained together for 10 years prior to their first divorce. Following her divorce, Baniski married a man named Edward Gonturi. The marriage lasted just 3 months before the couple divorced. Shortly thereafter, Baniski remarried her first husband, with whom she had 2 more children. The couple divorced for the second time in 1963. Weeks after her third divorce, Baniski began a relationship with a 20-year-old welder named Dennis Lee Bright, who also physically abused her. She had 1 child, Bright Dennis Lee Rain Jr., shortly after the birth of their son on May 16, 1964. Bright abandoned Baniski shortly thereafter. Baniski filed a paternity suit against Bright for financial support of their child, but Bright shall contribute to the care of their son. By 1965, Baniski lived along with her 7 children: Paul 17, Stephanie 15, John 12, Maria 11, Shirley 10, James 8, Dennis Lee Wright Jr. 1. Although 36 years old and 5 feet 6 inches in height, she weighed only 100 pounds and has been described as a gender underweight, asthmatic chain smoker suffering from clinical depression due to the stress of three failed marriages, a failed relationship, and recent miscarriage. In addition to the spotted checks she received from her first husband, a former Indianapolis policeman upon whom she primarily relied financially to support her children, Baniski associated performed odd jobs for neighbors and acquaintances, such as sweeping and cleaning, in order to earn money. Baniski resided in Indianapolis at 3850 East New York Street, where the monthly rent was $55. Ugh, we need to go back to that. We need to go back to $55 rent. So we're going to be talking about Sylvia. Sylvia Marie Hinkes was born on October 3rd of 1949, was the third of 5 children born to carnival workers. Okay. Now that I remember this story, I'm gonna warn y'all, this story, it's hard to hear. I wanted to do this story because, one, we need to remember the victims, and we cannot forget her. But I'm just letting y'all know. This story, yeah. Lester Celia Likens and his wife Elizabeth Betty. She was born between 2 sets of fraternal twins, Daniel and Danny, and Benny and Jenny. Jenny Likens suffered from polio, causing one of her legs to be weaker than the other. She was inflicted with a notable limp and had to wear a steel brace in one leg. Lester and Elizabeth's marriage was unstable. They often sold candy, beer, and soda at carnival stands around Indiana throughout the summer. Moving frequently and regularly, experienced severe financial difficulties. The Lincolns' son regularly traveled with them in order to assist with their job, but Sylvia and Jenny were discouraged from doing the same out of concern for their safety and education. As a result, both sisters frequently stayed with their relatives, often their grandmother. In her teen years, Sylvia Likens occasionally earned spending money by babysitting, running errands, or performing iron chores for friends and neighbors. Often giving her mother part of her earnings, she had been described as a friendly, confident, and lively girl with the long, heavy, light brown hair, expecting below her shoulders, and was known as Cookie to her friends. Although a celebrate, Likens always kept her mouth closed when smiling due to a missing front tooth, which she lost while roughhousing with one of her brothers during a childhood game. She was also fond of music, particularly the Beatles, and was normally protective of her remarkable, more teeny and insecure younger sister. On several occasions, the two sisters would visit a local skating rink where Sylvia would help Jenny skate by holding her hand while Jenny skated on her unconfident foot. By June 1965, Sylvia and Jenny Likens resided with their parents in Indianapolis. On July 3rd, their mother was arrested and secretly jailed for shoplifting. Shortly thereafter, Lester arranged for his daughter to board with Gertrude, the evil mother, the mother of two girls whom the sister had recently become acquaintances while studying at Reginald Technical High School. Paul and Stephanie, at the time of this boarding arrangement, Gertrude assured Lester she would care for his daughter until his return as if they were her own children. If he knew that was a lie. Shortly after 4th of July holiday, the sisters moved into 3050 East New York Street in order for their father and later their mother to travel to the East Coast with the carnival, with the understanding that Gertrude would receive weekly boarding fees of $20 to take care of their daughters until they returned to collect Sylvia and Jenny in November of that year. During the intentional week in which Sylvia and Jenny resided at the Baskini's household, the sisters were subject to very little discipline or abuse. Sylvia regularly sang along to pop records with Stephanie, and she willingly participated in housework at the Banking's residence. Both girls also regularly attended Sunday school with the Vincent's children, with the pastor communing in Sylvia's PD. Okay, I'm going to get to the abuse. I'm warning y'all. Get prepared. Although Lester Likens had agreed to pay Gruder, whatever her name is, $20 a week in exchange for the care of his daughter, after approximately 2 weeks, these payments failed to consistently arrive upon the permanent date, occasionally arriving 1 or 2 days late. Gruder began venting her frustration at this fact upon the sisters by beating their bar's knuckles with various implements such as 1/4 inch thick paddle, making statements such as, "Well, I took care of you two little bitches for a week for nothing." One occasion in late August, both girls were beating apparently 15 times in the back with the affirmation paddle after Paula had accused the sisters of eating too much food at the church supper the house children had attended. I hate this woman and these kids. Her kids. By mid-August, Gunther, whatever her name is, I don't care. I'm going to call her Gunther, had begun to focus her abuse almost exclusively upon Sylvia. Mind ya, if y'all look at this picture of her, Sylvia was so beautiful. And her daughters, Gunther daughters, they look like them Shrek. So they were jealous of Sylvia's beauty. I'm sorry that your mom married an ugly man and you turn out to look like goddamn Shrek. That is not Sylvia's problem. That is your problem, ma'am. I don't know what to tell you. With her permanent motivation likely being jealous of the girl's youth appearance, respectfully intentional. According to subsequent trial testimony, the abuse was intentionally inflicted upon Sylvia after she and Jenny had returned to the Binsky's residence from Arsenal Technical High School, as well as on weekends. The intentional abuse includes subjecting Sylvia to beatings and starvation, forcing her to eat leftover or spoiled food of the garbage cans. One occasion, Sylvia was accused of stealing candy she actually had purchased. On another occasion, in late August, Sylvia was subject to humiliation when she claimed to have a boyfriend in Laguna Beach whom she had met in the spring of 1965 when her family lived in California. In response, the devil of all devils asked if Sylvia had ever done anything with the boy, to which Sylvia, unsure of her meaning, replied, "I guess so," and explained that she had gone skating with the boys there and he had once gone to a park on the beach with them. Counting the conversation with Jenny and Stephanie, Sylvia mentioned she had once laid under the covers with her boyfriend. Upon hearing this, the devil, because that's what I'm going to call her, "Why didn't you do that, Sylvia?" Sylvia replied, "I don't know." And several days later, the devil returned to the subject with Sylvia telling her, "You're certainly getting big in the stomach, Sylvia. It looks like you're going to have a baby." Sylvia thought devil was kidding with her and said, "Yeah, it sure isn't getting big. I'm just going to have to go on in a diet." The devil then told her and the other girls in the house that whenever they did something with the boy, they would be sure to have a baby. She then kicked Sylvia in the genitals. Paula, herself 3 months pregnant and also jealousy of Sylvia's physical appearance, then participated in attacking Sylvia, knocking her off her chair and into the kitchen floor, shouting, "You ain't fit to sit in the chair." On another occasion, as the family ate supper, the devil, Paula, and a neighborhood boy named Randy Gordon, Leaper forced feed Sylvia a hot dog overloaded with condiments, including mustard and spice. Sylvia vomited as a result and was later forced to consume what she had. Okay, let me know if you're okay. If you have to go, just that's fine. I'll be back with the new video. But she had to consume what she threw up. She had to eat it back. And what was Sylvia's only act of revolution, she's alleged to have spread a rumor of a Sylvia Technical High School that Stephanie and Paula were prostitutes because she was upset with the household singling her out for similar occasion. I would have told them, yes, I did say y'all were prostitute. I sure did. I don't know who would want to sleep with y'all anyways, but yeah, I sure did. While at school, Stephanie was jokingly prostituting by a boy who told her that Sylvia had started the rumor about her. Upon returning home that day, Stephanie questioned Sylvia about the rumor and she admitted to starting it. Stephanie punched her in response, but Sylvia apologized to her in tears. Stephanie then also began to cry. However, when Stephanie's boyfriend, 15-year-old Cody, heard of the rumor, her brutal attack Sylvia, slapping her, banging her head against the wall, flipping her backwards into the floor. When the devil found out, she used a paddle to beat Sylvia. On another occasion, Paula beat Sylvia about the face with such a force that she broke her own wrist, having primarily focused her blows upon Sylvia's teeth and eyes. Later, Paula used the cast on her ribs to further beat Sylvia. The devil repeatedly falsely accused Sylvia of promiscuity and engaging in prostitution, writing about the fairness of prostitution and a woman in general. The devil would later occasionally force Janie to strike her own sister, beating Jenny if she did not comply. The other devil, Coy, and several of his classmates frequently visit the devil's house, reciting to both physical and verbally terming links, often collaborating with mixing children and the devil herself. With the devil activity encouragement, these neighborhood children routinely beat Sylvia. sometimes using her as a practice dummy in violent jude section, lacerating her body, burning her skin with cigarettes in excess of 100 times, and severely introducing her genital. To entertain the devil and her teen accomplices, Sylvia was forced at one point to strip naked in the family living room and parenting herself with a glass Pepsi bottle in their presence, with the devil stating to all present that the act of humiliation was for Sylvia to prove to Jenny what kind of girl you are. The devil eventually forbade Sylvia from attending school after she confessed to having stolen a jam suit from the school due to the devil having refused to purchase the clothing for her. For this act of theft, the devil whipped Sylvia with a 3-inch wide police belt. I wonder where her ex-husbands were. Or at least one of them, because I think one of them was still in their children's life. I think. The devil then switched her conversation to the evils of potential sex before repeatedly kicking Sylvia in the genitals as Stephanie Wright to Sylvia's defense, shouting she didn't do anything. The devil then burnt Sylvia's fingertips with matches before further whipping her. A few days later, the devil repeatedly whipped Jenny with the police belt after she reportedly stole a single tennis shoe from the school to wear on her strong foot. The sister siblings were afraid of notifying either family members or adults at their school of the stepping domestic turmoil. Both were afraid that doing so would only worsen their situation. Jenny in particular struggled against the urge to notify family members, as she had been threatened by the devil that she would herself be abused and tortured to the same degree as her sister if she did so. Jenny was also subject to bullying by the girls in her neighborhood, in addition to occasionally being ridiculed or beaten, whether she allowed to Sylvia's situation. In July and August, both Lester and Elizabeth Likens would occasionally return to Indianapolis to visit their daughters whenever their travel schedule offered them the opportunity. The last occasion Lester and Elizabeth visited their daughters was on October 5th. On the occasion, neither girls exhibited any visible signs of distress about the mistreatment to their parents. This was likely because both were in the presence of the devil and her children. Almost immediately after Lester and Elizabeth had left the devil household on their final visit, the devil turned to face Sylvia and stated, "What are you going to do now, Sylvia? Now they're gone." I can't stand this. I can't stand this woman. I really can't. I hope she's burning in hell. One occasion in September, the girls encountered their older sister Diana at a local park. Both Jenny and Sylvia informed Diana about the abuse they were enduring at the hands of their caregiver, adding that Sylvia was being specifically targeted for physical abuse and almost always for things she had neither said nor done. Neither sister mentioned the actual address where they resided, and intentionally Diana believed her sister must have been exaggerating their claims regarding the scope of their mistreatment. Several weeks prior to this, Sylvia and Jenny had encountered Diana in the same park while in the company of 11-year-old Maria, and Sylvia had been given a sandwich to eat. When she mentioned to her sister that she was hungry, Lynx remained silent about the matter, although Maria revealed this fact to her family in late September. In response, the devil accused Sylvia of engaging in gluttony before she and Paula choke blunt her. The pair then subject Sylvia to a scaling bath in order to cleanse her of sin. Woman, you're the one who has sins. I can't stand this woman. The devil grabbing Sylvia's hair and repeatedly banging her head against the back to relieve her whenever she fainted. Shortly after this accident, the father of a neighborhood boy named Michael John Moore phoned Arsenal Technical High School to announcedly report that the girls with open sores across her entire body was living at the household. As Sylvia had not attended school for several days, a school nurse visited East New York Street to investigate these claims. The devil claimed to the nurse that Sylvia had run away from her home the previous week and that she was unaware of her actual whereabouts, adding that Sylvia was out of control and that her open sores were a result of Sylvia's refusal to maintain decent personal hygiene. How do y'all believe? Oh my God. Did y'all not know how to do like a background check on people? Y'all didn't call the cops. The devil further claimed that Sylvia was a bad influence on both of her own children and her sister. The school made no further investigating concerning Sylvia's welfare. Then immediately neighbors of the family were a middle-aged couple named Ryan and Phyllis Vermeration. Both intentionally viewed the devil as an ideal caregiver for the Lincoln sister, and both had visited the Burskin residence on 2 occasions while the girls had been under their care. On both occasions, however, Valentino's witnessed Paul physically abusing Sylvia, who on both occasions had black eyes, and openly boasting about her mistreatment of the children to them. And y'all didn't call the cops after that? I know y'all didn't have cell phones back then, but y'all didn't have cameras? Some? Nothing? Upon their second visit, the Devil household both observed Lincolns to appear extremely meek and somewhat zombified in nature. Nevertheless, they will never report Sylvia's evident mistreatment to the authorities. Why would they? Why would they do something nice? On or about October 1st, Diana Shopmark discovered that her sister were at the Devil's House residence. She visited the property and attempt to intentionally regular contact. The devil, however, refused to allow Diana entry to the property, stating that she had received permission from their parents not to allow either of the girls to see her. She then ordered Diana to leave the property. Apparently 2 weeks later, Diana encountered Jenny by chance close to the home, inquiring as to Sylvia's welfare. She was informed, "I can't tell you or I'll get in trouble." Due to the increase in frequent arbitrarily of the torture and mistreatment Sylvia was subject to, she gradually became incontinent. She was denied any access to the bathroom, being forced to wet herself as a form of punishment for her insolence. On October 6th, the devil threw Sylvia into the basement and tied her up. Here, Sylvia was often kept naked, rarely fed, frequently deprived of water. Occasionally, she was tied to the railing of the basement stairs, where her feet barely touching the ground. In the weeks prior to locking Sylvia in the family basement, the devil had increasingly abused and tormented Sylvia. She would occasionally falsely claim to the children in her household that either she or herself or one of them had been receiving district assault from Sylvia, in the hope this would provoke them in belittling or attacking her. On one occasion, the devil held a knife aloft and challenged Sylvia to fight me back, to which Sylvia replied she did not know how to fight. In response, the devil inflicted a light wound to Sylvia's legs. Oh my, I hate this woman. I hate this woman. I hate this woman. Physically and mental torturement such as this would occasionally pause with the devil watched their favorite television shows. Neighborhood children were also occasionally charged 5 cents apiece to see displays of Sylvia's body, to humiliate, beat, scalp, burn, and mutilate her. Throughout Sylvia's captivity in the basement, The devil, frequently with assistance of her children and neighborhood children, restrained the gauche licked Sylvia before placing her in the tub filled with scaling water and pursuing to rub salt into her wounds. On one occasion, the devil and her 12-year-old son, John Jr., rubbed urine and feces from the devil's 1-year-old son's diaper into Sylvia's mouth before giving her a cup half filled with water and stating the water was all she would receive for the remainder of the day. On October 22, John Jr. tormented Sylvia by offering her to allow her to eat a bowl of soup with her fingers and then quickly taking it away. The bowl when Sylvia by the stage suffering from extreme malnutrition. Attempt to eat the food. The devil eventually allowed Sylvia to sleep upstairs on the condition that she learn not to wet herself. That night, Sylvia whispered to Jenny to secretly give her a glass of water before falling asleep. The following morning, the devil discovered that Sylvia had urinated on herself. As a punishment, Sylvia was forced to insert an empty glass cold water into her in the presence of the children before the devil ordered her into the basement. Shortly after, the devil shouted for Sylvia to return to the kitchen, then ordered her to strip naked before proclaiming her, "You have branded my daughter. Now I'm going to brand you." She began carving the words, "I'm a prostitute and proud of it," into Sylvia's abdomen with the heat needle. When the devil was unable to finish the branding, she introduced one of the neighbor's children present, 14-year-old Richard, to finish etching the words into Sylvia's flesh, as she took Jenny to an early grocery store. And what Hobbs would later insist with short light extending, he continued to brand text into Sylvia abandoned as she clenched her teeth and moaned. Both Hobbs and 10-year-old Shirley then led Sylvia into the basement, where each proceeded to use an adult bolt in an attempt to burn the letter S beneath Sylvia's left breast. Although they peeled one section of the loop backwards, this deep burn scar would resemble the number 3. Oh my God, I can't. I can't. How? You're doing this. You're mistreating this girl for $20. The devil later turned to Sylvia by claiming she would never be able to marry due to the words craved on her stomach, saying, "Sylvia, what are you going to do now? You can't get married now. What are you going to do? I'm sorry, ma'am, that your husband left your ugly ass looking trode and they divorced you. You wonder why? Because you're ugly. And Sylvia was beautiful. Sylvia would have gotten married. She would have had a happy husband, a happy family, a happy life, something that you were so jealous because you didn't have. I guess there's nothing I could do." Later that day, Sylvia was forced to display the carving to the neighborhood's children, with the devil claiming she had received the inscription as a sex party. The night, Sylvia considered to her sister, "Jenny, I know you won't want me to die, but I'm going to die. I can't tell." The following day, the devil woke Sylvia, then forced her to write a letter as she did take the contents, which intended to mislead her parents and believing their daughter had run away from the devil's house. I would have done that. I would have run away if I had the strength. The content of this letter was intended to frame a group of anonymous local boys for extremely abusing, manipulating Sylvia after she had intentionally agreed to engage in sexual relations with them before then inflicting the extreme abuse and torture upon her body. After Sylvia had written this letter, devil finished formulating her plan to have John Jr. and Jenny blindfold Sylvia, then take her to an early wood area known as Jimmy's Forest and leave her there to die. After she had finished writing the letter, Likens was then again tied to the stair railing and offered crackers to eat, although she refused them, saying, "Give it to the dog, I don't want it." In response, the devil forced the crackers into Sylvia's mouth before she and John beat her, particularly around the stomach. On October 25, Sylvia attempted to escape from the basement after overhearing a conversation between the devil and her son, pertaining to the family's plan to abandon her to die. She attempted to flee to the front door, however, due to her extensive injuries and gentle weakness, the devil caught her before she could escape the property. Sylvia was then given crackers to eat, but I was unstable to consume food due to her extreme state of duration. The devil forced the crackers into her mouth before repeatedly striking her face with curtains rod until sections of instrument were bent into right angles. Chloe then took her to the curtain rod from the devil and struck Sylvia one further time, redeeming her unconscious. The devil then dragged Sylvia into the basement. That evening, Sylvia desperately attempted to alert neighbors by screaming for help and hitting the walls of the basement, but the space immediately neighbors would later inform police she had heard the desperate combination and that she had intentionally the source as emanating from the basement, but that as the noise had suddenly ceased at approximately 3 a.m., she decided not to inform the police about the disturbance. Oh my God, woman, you heard screams and you didn't think of calling the police, and just because they stopped, red flag. Oh my God, I hate people. By the morning of October 26, Sylvia was unable to either speak intangibly or correctly coordinated. The movement of her limbs, devil moved Sylvia into the kitchen and, having propped her back against a wall, attempted to feed her a donut and a glass of milk. Yeah, that's too late, you little. She threw Sylvia to the floor in frustration. When Sylvia was unable to correctly move the glass of milk to her lips, she was then returned to the basement. "Ma'am, you caused that, so what are you mad about?" Shortly thereafter, Sylvia became delirious, repeatedly moaning and mumbling. When Paula asked her to restate the English alphabet links, Sylvia was unable to recite anything beyond the first 4 letters or to raise herself off the ground. In response, Paul verbally threatened her to either stand up or she would inflict a long jump upon her. The devil then ordered Sylvia, who had defected, to clean herself. That afternoon, several of Lincoln's other torturements gathering in the basement, Sylvia jerkily moved her arms in apparent to attempt to point the faces at the terminus she could recognize, making statements such as "You're Rick, you're Gooder," before Gooder tersely shut up, "You know who I am." Minutes later, Sylvia unsuccessfully attempted to bit into a rotten paper she had been given to eat, stating she could feel the lumsum in her teeth. Upon hearing this, Jamie replied, "Don't you remember, Sylvia? Your front tooth was knocked out when you were 7. Jenny then left Sylvia in a basement to perform catering chores for neighbors in the hope of spending money. In an attempt to wash Sylvia, laughing John spread her with the garden hose brought to the house that afternoon by Randy at the devil's request. Sylvia again desperately attempted to exit the basement but collapsed before she could reach the stairs. In response to this effort, the devil stamped upon Sylvia's head before standing and staring at her for several moments. Shortly after 5:30 p.m., Richard returned to the devil's residence and immediately proceeded to the basement. He slipped on the wet basement stairs, fell heavily to the floor of the basement to be confronted with the sight of Stephanie crying and cuddling Sylvia imitated and licked her body after she'd been ordered by her mother to clean Sylvia. Stephanie and Richard had decided to give Sylvia a warm soapy bath and dress her in new clothes. Then they laid her upon a mattress in one of the bedrooms, as Sylvia murmured for her final wish that her daddy was there and that Stephanie would take her home. Stephanie then turned to her younger sister Shirley, exclaiming, "Oh, she'll be all right." When Stephanie realized that Sylvia was not breathing, she attempted to apply mouth-to-mouth resuscitation, as the devil repeatedly shouted out to the children in the house that Sylvia was faking her death. Sylvia was 16 years old when she finally succumbed to her injury. The devil intentionally beat Sylvia's corpse with the book, shouting "Faker, faker," in order to rouse her. However, she soon panicked and instructed her son to call the police from a nearby payphone. When police arrived at her address at approximately 6:30 p.m., the devil led the officers to Sylvia's emaciated, essentially blanched, mutilated body laying upon a soil mattress in the bedroom. Before handing them to the letter she had forced Sylvia to write, and previously by her addiction. She also claimed she had been doctoring the children for an hour and more prior to her death, having applied rubbing alcohol to Sylvia's wounds and a failure to attend a first aid before she had died. She added that Sylvia had earlier run away from her home with several teenage boys before returning to the house earlier that afternoon, bare breasts and clutching to the note. Clutching a Bible, Paula, having stated to all present in the household that Sylvia's death was meant to happen, they glanced in Jenny's direction and calmly stated, "If you want to live with us, Jenny, you will treat you like our own sister." They, as previously instructed by the devil, Jenny Likens retailed the rehearsal version of events leading to Sylvia's death to police before whispering to the officer, "You get me out of here and I'll tell you everything." The former statement provided by Jenny Likens prompted officers to arrest the devil, Paul, John, on suspicion of Sylvia's murder within hours of the discovery of her body. The same day, Cole and Richard were also arrested and charged with the same offense. Their three eldest children plus Coy were placed in the custody of an early juvenile detention center. The younger children and Richard were detained at the Indianapolis Children's Guidance Home. All were held without bail pending trial. Intentionally, the devil denied involvement in Sylvia's death, although by October 27, she had confessed to having known the kids, particularly her daughter Paula and Coy, had physically and emotionally abused Sylvia, stating Paula did the most of the damage and Coy did a lot of the beating. The devil further admitted to having forced the girls to sleep in the basement on apparently 3 occasions when she had wet the bed. She became insensitive when an officer stated that likely reason Sylvia had become incontinent were her mental distress and injury to her kidneys. Sylvia, any rumors, Paul signed a statement admitting to having repeatedly beating Sylvia about the backside with her mother police belt, once breaking her wrists in Sylvia's jaw, inflicting other acts of betrayal, including pushing her down the stairs into the basement 2 or 3 times, inflicting a black eye. John admitted to having spanked Sylvia on one occasion, adding the most of the time, "I used my fists to abuse her." He admitted to having burned Sylvia with matches in several occasions, adding, that his mother had repeatedly burned the child with cigarettes. If y'all look at this woman picture, she looks like a damn ugly ass troll. 5 other neighbors' children who had participated in Sylvia abuse, Michael, Randy, Darlene, Judy, and Anna, had also been arrested by October 29. All the charges were cause injuring to person, and each was subsequently released into the custody of their parents under surveillance to appear as a witness at a coming trial. The autopsy of Sylvia's body revealed that she had suffered an excess of 150 separate wounds across her entire body. In addition to being extremely incapacitated at the time of her death, the wounds themselves varied location, natural severity, and the stage of healing. Her injuries include burns and severe bruising and extensive muscles, nerve damage. Her vaginal cavity was also swollen shut. Moreover, all of Sylvia's fingernails were broken backwards, and most of extreme layers of skin upon the child's face. Breast, neck, and right knee had peeled of recede, and her death throes Sylvia had eventually bitten through her lips, particularly severing sections of them from her face. The official cause of Sylvia's death was listed by coroner Dr. Arthur Keebley as a rupture homotenna due to her receiving a severe blow to her right temple. Both the shock she had permanently suffered due to the severe and permanent damage inflicted to her skin, the substance tissue, plus the severe malnutrition were listed as the contributing factors to the death. Rigor mortis had fully developed at the time of the discovery of her body, indicating Sylvia may have been decreased for up to 8 hours before she was found. Although Dr. Kelly did not note Sylvia had been recently bathed, possibility after death, and that this act could have sustained the loss of body temperature and those spent one set of remotus. The funeral for Sylvia Likens was conducted in the Russell Inch Funeral Home on Lynn, Indiana on the afternoon of October 29. The service was officiated by the Reverend Louis Gibson, with more than 100 mourners in attendance. Sylvia's great casket remained open throughout the ceremony, with portrait of her taken prior to July 1965, ornamenting her coffin. In elegy, the Reverend Gibson stated, "We all have our time of passing, but we won't suffer like our little sister suffered during these last days of her life." The Reverend Gibson then strode towards Sylvia's casket before adding, "She has gone to eternity." Following the service, Sylvia's casket was placed by pallbearers on hearse and driven to the Oak Hill Cemetery to be interred. This hearse was one of a 14-vehicle procession to drive to the cemetery for Sylvia's burial. Her headstone is inscribed with the words, "Our darling daughter." On December 30 of 1965, the Morgan County Grand Jury returned first-degree murder indicted against the devil. 2 of her 3 older children, Paula and John, also indicted were Richard Hobbs and Corey. Although all were charged with having repeatedly struck, beaten, kicked, and otherwise inflicted a combination of fatal injuries to Sylvia with permanent malicious. 3 weeks prior to the filing of the indictment against the 5 defendants, Stephanie had been released from custody upon a writ of habeas corpus bond, with the attorney successfully containing the state had influential evidence to support any murder or continuation fatal injuries charges against her. Stephanie waived her immunity from any potential independent prosecution while agreeing to testify against her family and any other individual charged with abusing and murdering Sylvia. As a former part a particular hearing held on March 16 of 1966, several psychiatrists testified before Judge Saul Isaac Rabb as their conclusion regarding psychiatric evaluation they had conducted upon 3 individuals, indicating that Sylvia murder. The experts testified they all 3 were mentally competent to stand trial. The trial of the devil and her children Paul and John, Richard, and Co. began on April 18th of 1966. All were tried together before Judge Rabb at an Indianapolis City County building. Intentionally, jury selection began in this date and continued to several days. The prosecution consisted of Leroy K. New, Marjorie Western, who announced their intention to seek the death penalty for all 5 defendants. On April 16, they also successfully argued before Judge Rabb that all the defendants should be tried together as they were immediately charged with the acting and concerned in their collective crimes against Sylvia, and that if each were tried separately, neither judge nor jury could hear the testimony related to a total picture of the accomplishment offense committed. Each prospective juror was questioned by counsels for both prosecution and defense in relation to their opinions regarding capital punishment being a just penalty for first-degree murder, and whether a mother was actually responsible for the deportment of her children. Jurors who expressed in opposition to the death penalty were executed from jury by Leroy New. Any who either work with children, expressed prodigies against insanity defense, or persuasion regarding the actual horrified nature of Sylvia's death was executed by defense counsel. So they got so the devil was defended by William. Her daughter Paul was defended by George. Richard was defended by James, and John and Cor were defended by Forrest. These were the attorney. The attorneys for Richard, Hobbs, Coy, Paula, and John Jr. claimed that they had been pursued into participating in Sylvia's sermon, abuse, and torture by their mother. The mother herself pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity. Girl, you were not crazy. And I don't want to hear that whole no. Yes, at the end of the day, I have so much to say about the story. Let me just finish. One of the first witnesses to testify on behalf of the prosecution was Deputy Coroner Charles, who testified on April 29 as to the intense pain Sylvia had suffered, stating that her fingernails were broken backwards, numerous deep cuts and punctures covered much of her body, and that her lips were extremely in shatters due to her having repeatedly bitten and chewed upon them. He further testified that Sylvia had been in a state of shock for between 2 to 3 days prior to her death, and that Sylvia may have been into events of state of shock to offer much resistance to any form of subject treatment in her final hours. Although he emphasized that aside from the extensive swelling inside and around her genitalia, Sylvia's body bore no evidence of direct sexual molestation. On May 2nd and 3rd, Jenny testified against all 5 defendants, stating that each had reportedly and extensively both physical and emotionally abused her sister, adding that Sylvia had done nothing to provoke the assault, and that there had been no truth to either of the rumors she had been falsely accused of spreading or the slur each had made against Sylvia's character. During her testimony, Jenny stated that the abuse her sister, and to much lesser degree she herself had endured, began approximately 2 weeks after they had begun to live in the devil's household. And that as the abuse her sister was forced to nurse escalated. Sylvia had occasionally been unable to protect tears due to her state of dehydration. Jenny burst into tears as she recalls how just days before Sylvia's died, she had said to her sister, "Jenny, I know you don't want me to die, but I'm going to die. I can tell it." Section of Jenny Link's testimony were later corroborated by that of Randy, who stated he had once witnessed Sylvia crying, but that she had shed no actual tears. Leeper also testified to having witnessed Stephanie strike Sylvia real hard after her mother had ordered her to remove her clothes in his presence. He then visibly smirked as he confessed to having himself beating Sylvia one on no anywhere between 10 or 40 separate incidents. On March 10th, the Baptist ministry named Roy testified to having known a teenage girl who was being abused in the devil's house. Although he had failed to report this information to authorities as having been informed by the devils that Sylvia had made advances to a man for money, he had believed the girl was being punished for tolerating. The same day, 13-year-old Judy also testified, admitting to having witnessed Sylvia once endured salt being rubbed into the sore upon her legs until she screamed. Doug also testified to one occasion where she witnessed 10-year-old Shirley rip open Sylvia's blouse, to which Richard had made the casual remark, "Everybody's having fun with Sylvia." The following day, she testified in her own defense. She denied any responsibility for Sylvia's purging abuse, torture, and unlimited death, claiming her children and other children within her neighborhood must have committed the acts within her home, which she described as being such a madhouse. She also added that she had been too preoccupied with her own ill health and the pressure to control her children. Woman, if you don't... In response to questioning relating to other, she had physically abused Sylvia's sister, claimed that although she had stayed to spank Sylvia in one occasion, she was emotionally unable to finish doing so and had not hit the children in any further occasion. She denied any knowledge of Sylvia's having ever induced any beating and scaling breeding in her burning within her home. She's basically putting her child's, that's exactly what she's doing. She's blaming her children. 2 days later, Richard Hobbs testified in his own defense, describing how his mom had called Sylvia to the kitchen on October 23rd, stated to her, "You have branded my children, so now I'm going to brand you." Hobbs testified that his mom began etching the insults into Sylvia's abandonment before asking him to finish the task. Although Hobbs testified this act of branding had brought blood to the surface of Sylvia's flesh and that Sylvia had begged him to stop, he remained abandoned in the section of branding he had inflicted had been light. Hobbs further testified that he had intentionally believed Sylvia would not be in the household on October 26th, as his mom had informed him she intended to get rid of Sylvia the day prior. Her further state that after Sylvia's death, she had simply returned home to watch the rest of Lloyd Dawson's show. And this is going to be a long video, so I really don't need it to be that long. So a conviction. So I'm just going to let you know about the conviction. The trial of the 5 defendants lasted 17 days before the jury retired to consider the verdict. On May 29th of 1966, after deliberating for 8 hours, the panel of 8 men and women found the devil guilty of first-degree murder, recommending a sentence of life imprisonment. Paula was found guilty of second-degree murder. Hobbs and John were found guilty of manslaughter, Upon hearing Judge Rapp pronounce the verdict, the devil and her children burst into tears and attempt to counsel each other, and Hobbs and Byrne remain expensive. On May 25th, Gunther and Paula were formally sentenced to life in prison. The same day, Richard, Court, and John each received sentences of 2 to 21 years to serve in the Indiana Reformatory. So I'm just going to tell you about the aftermath. Following in her 1985 release from prison, Gunther relocated to Ohio. She never accepted full responsibility for Sylvia's negligent treatment and death, insisting she was unable to precisely recall any of her actions in the months of Sylvia torture and abuse within her home. She permanently blamed her action upon the medication she had been prescribed to treat her asthma. Gertrude lived in a relative obscurity in Laurel, Ohio, until her death due to lung cancer on June 16th of 1990 at the age of 61. Regarding Gertrude Benning's death and the issue raising pertaining to her sentencing at both of her trials, John Dean, a former reporter for the Indianapolis Star, who had provided extensive coverage of this case, stated in 2015, I never thought she was insane. I thought she was a down-tormenting, mean woman. Dean has also linked the case to William Golding's debut novel, Lord of the Files. Although he was stated Sylvia increased physical and emotional abuse was not a result of children going wild. It was children doing what they were told. Of Bernstein's actual motive for torturing and eliminating murdering Sylvia, returning for his bond obtained in 2014. She had a miserable life. What I think this was unlimited about was jealousy. And that is it, guys. This story, to me, it's just heartbreaking because in my opinion, I wouldn't have wanted her to have gotten. I didn't think she had deserved to get the death penalty. I think she should have suffered her whole life in prison. Why did they let her out? I don't know. She should have stayed in prison. She should have died in prison. I just don't get it. Like, I don't get it. I don't. Oh yeah, so I forgot to tell you. Okay. So on June 2001, a 8-foot-tall journey memorial was formally dedicated to Sylvia life in the Legacy Monument Park, Washington Street, and in Indianapolis. The dedication was attended by several hundred people, including members of the Likens family. The memorial itself is described with these words. The memorial is a memory of a young child who died a tragic death. A result of loss, change, and awareness increase. This is commemorating to our children that the Indianapolis Police Department working to make this a safe city for our children. Sylvia Link's death is credited with the adoption of Indiana Matter Report law and with an increased understanding of the investigation and recognition of abuse. The law states that should a member of the public suspect a child is suffering abuse or neglect, the citizen suspecting the abuse has alleged obligation to report the abuse to authorities. In October 26 of 2015, numerous Indianapolis citizens, including Likens' older sister Diana Bell, gathered in Lynchburg, Indiana to honor Sylvia Links, to reflect upon her life, upon the 50th anniversary of her death, and to honor all her children who lost their lives to child abuse. At the memorial, service, Diana informed those present that Sylvia's legacy must always be remembered. Sylvia's tragedy, murder, and abuse must always be remembered. Sylvia Child Advocate Center, as a child advocate organization officially dedicated to the memory of Sylvia Likens. Founded in 2010, LeBron, Indiana, intentionally named the Bond County Child Advocacy Center. This is a non-profit organization, was renamed in Likens' honor and in 2016, with the exclusive director stating, "The most important thing that we can do is tell kids that are hurt and we're listening. Something no one did for young Sylvia. Her family is thankful that it doesn't have to be that way anymore. She did not die in vain. She died in horrified death, but because of what we're hoping that another child can be safe." This case, oh God, like it's just, it sucks that things like this have to happen, for changes to be made. If you see something or you hear something, please call the police. If you see a child that is suffering and you see them with bruises, call the police. Call the police. Save this child's life, because you never know. You never know what this piece of this garbage of a mother did to her child. To this child. Over $20. She lost her life over $20. And you cannot blame the parents. Do not blame the parents for not wanting to take their kids with them. They wanted to make sure that their child had an education and to stay and have friends, and be social. But I do wish that the neighbors could have done more or could have said more. I wish that the nurse could have been more lenient and okay, where is she? I want to see her. That could have probably saved her life. But this is about Sylvia, a beautiful young girl, only 16 years old, who did not deserve any of it, who wasn't allowed to grow old and get married and have kids, and who knew what she would have become. She would have probably made a difference in this world. But because of one cruel woman and her kids, they took that away from her. And I hope that Gunther, whatever her name is burning in hell. And I hope that her kids are having a miserable life. I don't even know if they're dead or alive. I don't care. Could care less. But I really do hope. This has been one of my longest videos ever, but I have to tell this story because this one just hit me to the core. It really did. And I don't know. I just don't understand how can someone be that cruel. But guys, I will see you again next time with a new video. Please have a wonderful day, and I hope you all enjoy your Saturday. Bye.